We're talking to you. How do people go about returning to their lives and their livelihoods? What are the challenges they'll now face on the ground, Hani?
Darren, one of the biggest challenges we happen to be speaking to people today about this is it's not just to have been experiencing this massive psychological damage, that non-stop attacks and the trauma that keep evolving in each passing day, but also the fact that they're losing parts of their history, part of their memories, part of where they grew up. And, when I walk sometimes in the street, I don't just see those gray shades of the rubble and the ruins. My mind always try to imagine that these were colorful, people were laughing here, people gather at these corners of the streets or inside these little shops or behind the walls where families gather around dining tables. That does not exist anymore. So it's not just the physical destruction that was so heavy on people, but also the psychological level, particularly those who lost family members, and they happen to be the only survivors after these attacks. They are the only ones finding now all of their family members were killed. All of this together has a very difficult impact on people at rebuilding shattered lives. And when we say shattered life, it's literally shattered, because not only family been scattered across the strip, but they're gone missing. They were killed. They've been in hospitals for a long time. They people for months now, 2 years exactly. Few of the families managed to be together on a dining table, but everybody else.
Oh my God!
The strip, either because they lost someone or the family happened to be.
Oh fuck! Predictably, following a lull over the last few days, a large wave of strikes now by the Israeli Air Force against Gaza City, with a ceasefire agreement to go into effect roughly 10 hours at 12. Oh.
Will be monitored very closely. And the Israelis have previous when it comes to making an agreement and then breaching it. And we've seen that in Gaza itself, but also in southern Lebanon, just in the last few months. And so there will be a concern. So I'm sure the negotiators who are there, particularly for the Middle East and Muslim countries, will want to make sure that every step of this is marked, monitored and assessed at each and every single step, because, as you say, peace deals can fall apart very quickly. It is the old Reagan line of trust but verify, and that is exactly what they'll be hoping that they do. But from Donald Trump's statement when he said both sides will be treated fairly, you can guarantee that those who have talked Hamas into making sure that this was a deal that they could sign will be holding Donald Trump to those exact words.
All right, Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher live for us there in.
I don't have any confidence in Israel. I don't have any confidence in America, but I do have confidence in the leaders of the resistance movement making the correct calculation. They recognize that it's a gamble, but if they're taking this approach, if they're agreeing to this decision, then very clearly, this is. This is probably there's more confidence
from Washington, D.C.
on their
Alan,
side.
So we're all waiting on tenterhooks for news of this, and news that Trump has now posted on his Truth social media saying we have a deal. What are you seeing and hearing there at the White House?
This has been building, particularly over the last couple of hours, when Donald Trump, in a meeting at the White House, said he just stepped away from a call with his team that were in Egypt in Sharm el-Sheikh, and he was encouraged by the progress that had been made and thought there would be an announcement soon. Talked about heading to the Middle East at the weekend. That may now be brought forward. It appears that the outline of a deal has been done. Donald Trump, on his Truth social platform, has, just in the last couple of minutes, said, "I'm very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan." This means that all of the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed-upon line as the first steps towards a strong, durable and everlasting peace. All parties will be treated fairly. This is a great day for the Arab and Muslim world, Israel, all surrounding nations, and the United States of America. And we want to thank mediators from Qatar, Egypt and Turkey who worked with us to make this historic and unprecedented event happen. Blessed are the peacemakers. President Donald J. Trump. So after hours of speculation that this was going to happen, that we were edging closer, that there was more optimism
Going on in this chat today. Breaking from Trump, he has finally announced it. I am very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan. This means that all the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed-upon line as the first steps towards a strong, durable, everlasting peace. All parties will be treated fairly. This is a great day for the Arab and Muslim world, Israel, all surrounding nations, and the United States of America. And we thank the mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey who work with us to make this historic and unprecedented event happen. Blessed are the peacemakers. Yeah, also, Hamas did technically beat Donald Trump to the announcement by revealing this information to drop site. But, you know. That's neither here nor there. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Please read previous message. Palestinian here. Remind chat not to infantilize our armed resistance as they're fully aware and have decades of experience about what Israel's goals and tactics are, as well as the United States. I'm sure they're fully prepared in the case that Israel blows up these negotiations as well. Do not forgive. We have been dealing with these ethnic supremacists for over 77 years. Yes. But that's the only reason why I said, like, children of Israel slaughter up until the last second is this is how Israel operates, by the way. And we know this because there have been many ceasefires that have taken place. This is, weirdly enough, this is not in an incredibly twisted way. Israel's intensifying bombing campaigns actually does mean a ceasefire is imminent. Because that's how they fucking operate. They've done this with the Iranian ceasefire. They've done this with the Lebanon ceasefire, which, by the way, they still bomb Lebanon. Like, they bombed Lebanon and killed American citizens like a couple months ago. This is when Israel starts intensifying its bombing campaign, that means a fucking ceasefire is coming. It is so fucked up, but that is how they operate. No, they're not trying to force Hamas' response to undermine the process. This is just how they always work. This is how they've always done it. Every single time. And we have tracked every single one of these ceasefires that took place. Short term, long term, doesn't matter. And in every single circumstance, Israel has always done this. Right until the last moment they can, they will try to get as many kills as they possibly can. And right now, in the Strip, Palestinians are out in the streets fucking celebrating because they think, you know, that this ceasefire will finally be complete, that they believe that it's actually going to happen. So I could see them just unleashing on, in a last act of cruelty, unleashing upon a civilian population that is going outside for the first time ever, and with the hopes that maybe tomorrow there won't be fucking drones overhead. Senior American official says to Barack Ravid, the war in Gaza has ended. The hostages will be released in 72 hours after the Israeli cabinet approves the agreement. The assessment is that this will happen at the latest on Monday. Didn't they do this with the last temporary ceasefire? Yes, they did. They did this in Lebanon too. They did this with Iran. They always do this shit, okay? How much they can get away with is entirely dependent on what kind of a military deterrent the opposition has, for the record. And the only reason why they were forced to stop with Iran was America, because America said no more. Trump literally said he made the planes turn around. He said he made the planes fucking turn around. They were trying to do a last-second bombing campaign again. And a big part of the reason why he made the planes turn around wasn't because, like, he really loves Iran or something. It's because Iranian missiles had unironically eroded the defenses of Israel. We found out the only path to a brokered agreement to end the genocide rested with Trump. There is no other deal to be taken. Either this or return to the fight with full American support coupled with Arab and Islamic passivity and letdown, said the source. I mean, but that has been the case. That has been the fucking case. Why do you keep saying Google Jeremy Scahill? How come when you look up Jeremy Scahill on Google, it says Premium Bandai as his name? What are you saying? I don't know, man. The fuck is going on?
Idea he would go in with the Israeli defense.
They're going to give a Nobel Peace Prize to Hamas after all of this. Trump is going to bomb the Nobel Peace Prize committee.
Excuse me. That might not be the optics, but then Donald Trump has never been too much concerned about optics that may be read a different way from everyone else. It would be a huge logistical and security operation, although it is possible. While foreign journalists have not been allowed in Gaza, the Israelis have made accommodation for those that they think will help put their side of the story, and allowed the journalists in under a huge security cordon. So it's possible that that could be expanded and delivered by Donald Trump. And there may be a welcome for Donald Trump from the Palestinian side, because after 2 years of constant war, a U.S. president seems to have found...
I'm reading from other sources as well, from Hakan Fidan, the Turkish minister, who was also involved in these peace talks, right? He says the Gaza plan includes many details, but our priority now is to start the ceasefire and release the prisoners. Netanyahu always has an alternative plan to disrupt the negotiations, but I do not think he has much room to maneuver this time. Agreement on a ceasefire in Gaza will allow the start of exchange operations and the expansion of the entry of humanitarian aid. I don't know. I don't know if that is the case. Netanyahu says, with God's help, we will bring them all home after Trump announces first phase of Israel-Hamas deal. These are the first words that have come from Benjamin Netanyahu on the deal. I think the sticky point on this is who gets to control the Gaza Strip. That's the sticky point. Is it Palestinians? Or is it going to be Palestinians, or is it going to be Tony Blair and Donald Trump, even if we're getting real crazy with it, right? Because Donald Trump wants it to be Donald Trump and Tony fucking Blair, which is ridiculous, right? It's completely unacceptable. Especially... I mean, it's completely unacceptable. We'll see.
Negotiations going on, very strong one to get to this point where the announcement made by, or the post made by Donald Trump about reaching an agreement between Hamas and Israel. But at least for phase one, which is the handing over the captives and then the withdrawal to an agreed upon line as a first step, a preliminary step for further negotiations and further agreements. It is just, I'm sure if we talk to people now, the reaction would be very, very excited, very happy it happened. At least they are distancing away from the anxiety that had engulfed all of their feelings throughout the day and hope for what was going to happen. The level of anxiety is less, and the sense that we are going in the right direction at least for now. And we're going to wait until we talk to people. So we'll see what's going to happen in the coming hours.
Yeah, Hani, we still have a long way to go, as this is just phase one of Trump's peace plan. I mean, this must be pretty emotional for you. You've been covering this story now for 2 years. With many people close to starving because Israel's siege and war on the Strip, many with nowhere to live, what are people's immediate needs on the ground now, Hani?
It will be definitely the sufficient free flow of aid, because people are still living through famine. And the past few days, it has started to be more aggressive in Gaza as the Israeli military extended the offensive and it prevented the entry of food. It shut down and blocked completely the northern crossing, leaving people at a very difficult position. Prices were started to skyrocket once again. Depletion in the market, stalls were empty, reminding us of the past 3 months of the enforced starvation and dehydration, to the point where the IPC report announced that there was a famine going on, and famine has been confirmed there. People are still living the byproducts of this across the Strip here in central area. Anywhere you go, you walk in the market, in the street, you will find items, you will find the products, but these are not necessarily what people need to survive. We talk about fish produce that are not available. We talk about sources of protein and vitamins that are not available. So one thing to start with is the free flow of humanitarian, commercial aid, food supplies, water supplies.
Brother, you said, I hope they hunt down Yasser Abu Shabaab when this is all over. I'm going to keep it very real with you. I think there is a higher likelihood that Israel by force makes Yasser Abu Shabaab the head of whatever like fake military that exists, and they'll put people like Ahmed Fouad al-Khatib in charge of like the peace peace commission, like people that work for like the Atlantic Council, and like and the son of Hamas guy will be like leading the Gaza Peace Committee. It's fucking ridiculous.
Comes to the hazardous when it comes to safety, very dangerous for them, but they had no other choice. For them, it was better than sleeping on the streets or the pavement. So these are the conditions that people are waiting for to happen and to improve. Remember, on the first phase of the ceasefire, the Israeli military deliberately blocked the entry of tents and other infrastructure and elements needed to build proper shelters, including the entry of mobile homes that was prevented by the Israeli military. So this time people are more hopeful that these are the priorities. Particularly, we are drawing near to a winter season, and soon enough you will find a lot of people are searching desperately for a proper shelter from the cold weather, from the rain, and from everything that is could be affecting their livelihood and their safety. These are the important things right now for people. But the most important element right now is that you gradually regain that sense of safety. You can walk around the block, you walk on the street, not worried about these unprotectable falling bombs. Because as of this moment, I can tell you, at least in the area where I'm at, there's no drone buzzing in the background. I'm not sure about Gaza City, but here I'm not.
Oh, yeah, I saw this. Actually, a couple days ago, 5 prominent members of the Yasser Abu Shabaab gang turned themselves into resistance. Israel refused to include the ISIS link to gang into the IDF tracking unit, and then informed them in the case this truce goes through that they will not protect the criminal gang. Oh, that's interesting.
Hearing any, and definitely not
Destruction. It must seem really strange now that the silence must be deafening, Hani.
It's unusually quiet, to be honest with you. For the past 731 days, it became part of the daily routine, daily life. I know it's wrong to say this. It shows how much psychologically we've been damaged by this war machine, by the genocidal acts, that a quieter night is unusual for all of us here, because right away you think...
There is more information coming out of Drop Site only a minute ago from the Qatar side that was also involved in the deal making here. Let me pull that up really quickly. Hamas has also released a statement that like the release of Barghouti is essential. I covered that already. Marwan Barghouti, for those of you who don't know. And new from Dropsite, Qatar's foreign ministry announced that mediators reached an agreement on all the provisions and implementation mechanisms of the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal. Unlike Trump's announcement, Qatar's statement explicitly says the agreement will lead to ending the war alongside the release of Israeli and Palestinian captives and the entry of aid. The details will be announced later, spokesperson for Qatar's foreign ministry says. I mean, it seems hopeful, and we do definitely need a little bit of hope.
Remind our viewers who are just joining us here on Al Jazeera again of the dire, the disastrous humanitarian situation in Gaza during the war and the amount of
Hamas
aid
has released an additional statement after Donald Trump's release of the Truth Social, his Truth Social post. Hamas has released an additional statement that says, after responsible and serious negotiations conducted by the movement and the Palestinian resistance factions aiming to reach a ceasefire to stop the extermination war against our Palestinian people and the withdrawal of the occupation from the Gaza Strip, the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, announces reaching an agreement to end the war on Gaza, the withdrawal of the occupation from it, the entry of aid and the exchange of prisoners. We call on Trump, the guarantor countries of the agreement, and various Arab, Islamic, and international parties to obligate the occupation government to fully implement the agreement's entitlements and not allow it to renege or delay the application of what has been agreed upon. We salute our great people in the Gaza Strip, Jerusalem, the West Bank, inside and outside the homeland, who recorded unprecedented stances of dignity, heroism, and honor, and confronted the fascist occupation projects targeting them and their national rights. These great sacrifices and stances that foiled the Israeli occupation's plans for subjugation and displacement. We affirm that the sacrifices of our people will not be in vain and that we will remain committed to the pledge, and we will not abandon our people's national rights until freedom, independence, and self-determination are achieved. For those of you who always were duped early on in the aftermath of October 7, that Hamas actually has in its 1988 charter, even before they like fully formed as a political movement and a political organization, that they wanted to purge all the Jews from the land of Israel. Hamas, since I believe 2017, has fully fleshed out a new charter that actually abides by a two-state solution as long as there is full-blown sovereignty for the Palestinian population. Obviously, a big part of the deal, a big part of achieving full-blown sovereignty would require having a standing military, and also unlimited pathways for trade
the impact of,
in and out of the Gaza Strip.
Malnutrition that has created irreversible damage that for people who suffer from malnutrition now inside hospitals, even if food is available, they need much better care now, much more high-level intervention, medical intervention, in order to survive these conditions. And we talk about the children who might have problems when it comes to physical growth or intellectual growth. All of these things need to be addressed immediately in order to save the society. Without this, we're going to be seeing more decline over the coming months, but unless that is addressed properly.
Hani, let me just get a final thought to you. I know we'll be talking to you throughout the night, of course. Gaza has faced utter destruction. I mean, most of the Strip is now unlivable as we're looking at these pictures of the destruction.
At least shortly after that. Now, the White House has, in the last half hour, called what we call a lid. That means there'll be nothing more from the president this evening, so we can't, it may well go on to Truth Social. We'll keep an eye on that, obviously, but there'll be nothing coming through the press officer from the White House. It may well be that at the moment, behind the doors of the White House,
so they're just going to keep bombing like crazy.
To the Middle East. First thing
I just want to know why the Trump admin presented such a reasonable plan this time. Why the sudden shift compared to previous plans, which were always super pro-Israel and essentially non-starters for Hamas? No, they didn't. They did present the same fucking non-starter for Hamas proposal. The only difference in this instance is that Hamas at least agreed to the conditions. That's it. That's the only difference.
Well, there's always a talk of, well, there's a deal in the offing, it's about to be signed. But as we've learned over the last 2 years, particularly when I've reported from the Middle East and from here on this, there's no deal until there's a deal. Until the names are on the paper, nothing's happened. But of course, it's all about sequencing. It's about, you do this, then we do that. If you pull back to there, we'll do that. And there could be concerns that the Israelis have agreed to pull back to a certain distance. And you know that that will...
Washington, Alan, no doubt will...
Oh my God. Evan Hill over at Open Source and Visual Forensics Investigations Open at Washington Post reports new. This is from LH Reports and a guy who previously worked at Forensic Architecture. New. Since October 2023, the IDF spokesperson unit has released dozens of 3D animations illustrating alleged Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iranian sites. The style is unmistakable. Satellite zoom-ins, black and white wireframes, and red textured houses. A new visual language of war. Fascinating work here tracing how the IDF recycled 3D assets from a cyberpunk sci-fi art project, the Scottish Maritime Museum, and elsewhere to populate its widely seen models of supposed enemy locations in Gaza, Lebanon, and Iran. One of the most infamous, the alleged underground Hamas command center at Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, used to justify an unprecedented assault on the biggest medical center in Gaza, was actually an animation that the IDF had used the previous year, saying at the time it was a tunnel beneath a UN school. What? You mean to tell me that these guys were fucking doing such a piss poor job that they were reusing assets? That it wasn't actually a real schematic? It wasn't actually real schematics of the undisputable Hamas tunnels under the fucking under the Al-Shifa hospital? I thought there was a command center. Wow. How did they not realize they would be caught for this? Oh, right. They know and they don't care. Exactly. Exactly. They do not give a shit. You're telling me Israel lied? Okay, dude. Yeah, remember the gold vault under the vault full of gold under a Lebanese hospital, and they forgot that Lebanon isn't Gaza, and you have Western reporters who can just like knock on the door of the hospital. Which, by the way, if there was a gold vault under the under any hospital, that still doesn't give Israel the right to blow up the hospital, mind you. But they wanted to do that, and then Western media just knocked on the door and was like, "Can we see your vaults?" There, Israel says there's gold. Hezbollah gold. And they were like, okay, sure. Take a look. It is alarming, once again, that not a single fucking person held Israel to account after this. They didn't turn around and go, hey, by the way, what's up with this shit? You guys claimed that there were like, you know, miles and miles of tunnels under all of these like key infrastructure that you blew up, and you never showed miles and miles of tunnels that were in operation. With Al-Shifa, they showed the tunnels that they had built under the Al-Shifa hospital when Israel was in control over the strip. Okay. They also showed personally that those fucking tunnels were actually, the remaining tunnels were blocked. There was no direct entry point. Unless they poured concrete while there was a fucking genocide going on, it would make no goddamn sense, would it? But remember how many people fucking yelled at me when the Al Ahli hospital was bombed. And I said, this is 100% Israel. Very unlikely that it's anybody else, especially considering that Israel had bombed that hospital 2 days prior. Little known fact. The Al Ahli hospital was hit with an artillery shell 2 days prior to the courtyard explosion. 2 days prior. And all of the major media, just like myself, said, BBC, everybody else said, yeah, this is most likely Israel. Of course, Israel blows up hospitals all the time. They have done so in the past. And what's really interesting is that they all turned around and apologized when Israel did this like bullshit ass, like, no, it was actually a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket. I promise. Tariq Abash, before I resigned, John Feiner was the guy who said to me and others that we had credible intelligence there was a Hamas military base in Al-Shifa hospital days before Israel's incursion that led to the deaths of premature babies in incubators. Even if that intelligence was right, it absolutely wasn't. Remember the ridiculous Israeli walkthrough video as evidence. You still don't have a right to kill babies. But it was so evident that this purported intelligence was bullshit that Jeff Bezos' Washington Post published a takedown investigation of the claims. The damage was done, and it was too late. Not just for those babies, but for the dozens of future military actions on hospitals and schools that Israel would commit. Taking countless more lives. I am all for people recognizing that we need to shift our policy on Israel-Palestine, but if you spent nearly a year and a half with the power to do so and instead made excuses for allowing a genocide, especially when you can't even take the time in your word salad to admit your role and responsibility in getting the U.S., getting us to where we are today. Anyway, feel free to read for yourself and decide if John cares about Palestinian lives or about how the policies he supported have undermined American interests, our national security, and our global credibility. Maybe someday when Democrats have influence to stop war crimes, they'll use it. Yeah, this is after John Feiner wrote that article on Politico, the op-ed piece, where he said, "We serve the Biden admin. It's time to impose conditions It's time to impose conditional aid to Israel. Impose conditions on the aid to Israel." Remember when they first blew up the Al Ahly courtyard and the international media initially suspected that it was obviously Israel because they'd blown up the hospital 2 days prior to the courtyard explosion? And then they fucking turned around and said it was an Islamic Jihad rocket. It was a Hamas rocket. Or it was actually an intercepted rocket that fell in the courtyard and had this like massive explosion. Ridiculous things, ridiculous claims. And that was enough for all of the international media organizations to turn around and apologize to Israel. And then Israel took that and literally took that confidence and basically blew up every other hospital. Every single fucking hospital in the Strip has been attacked by Israel directly. Every single one. At the time, motherfuckers were saying, "Hassan, how dare you say Israel would strike a hospital? Israel would never strike a hospital." This is part of the reason why it's very difficult to trust what Israel says. You must wait to see what Israel does. Speaking of mistrust in our mainstream media institutions, breaking news: CNN's Van Jones is among 16 mainstream journals, including 2 New York Times reporters, serving as mentors in a new journalism fellowship explicitly created to help Israel win its information war. Drop site Sharif Abdul Quddus reports that Jackie Karch, who launched the fellowship after October 7, said it was her way to shift the narrative in Israel's favor, citing a call to fight on the battlegrounds of academia, law, business, media as inspiration. Karch has praised the IDF as the most moral army in the world and dismissed Gaza's casualty figures. New York Times mentors include former Jerusalem bureau chief Judy Radorin and Sharon Otterman, who covers campus protests. The fellowship claims to be resolutely nonpartisan, though its founder has never expressed sympathy for the tens of thousands of Palestinians killed. Including 20,000 children in what UN officials and a vast majority of genocide scholars characterize as genocide. Incredible stuff. I mean, it's true that Zionism is nonpartisan in the U.S. Yes, unfortunately it is. There is a bipartisan consensus on Zionism in the United States. Okay? There's a clarification to that post from Dropsite. Hold on, let me fix the gray bars again, and then I'll read that. The clarification reads as follows. Not all 16 mentors are journalists. Kudos writes in his story for Dropsite that the fellowship has attracted 16 scholars and journalists from several mainstream publications to serve as mentors, including The Atlantic, Spectrum News, The Spectator, Ynet, Times of Israel, and 2 journalists at The New York Times. Yeah. There is no other country on the planet that gets to do this kind of shit. Like openly, at the behest of a foreign nation, openly dominate American discourse like this. They don't hide it. They don't shelter you from the truth, or they just straight up say it as it is. They say, "We're doing this." Anyway, on that note, I am once again tired. And therefore, this will be the end of my broadcast for today. I will, of course, be live tomorrow talking to David Adler, who actually was recently released after being kidnapped by the Israeli government. David Adler is one of the members of Progressive International. I will be talking to him specifically about his experiences tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific time, about being apprehended, about going on the Gaza Sumud Flotilla. He's the co-general coordinator of Progressive International, someone I've spoken to quite a bit. He is actually originally a Los Angelino. Now I believe he lives somewhere in Europe, but wonderful person. And he will talk about his experiences being brutalized by the Israeli state for the crime of trying to penetrate the illegal
in the chat. So hi.
The illegal Gaza blockade.
Than there has been at any point in the last 2 years. It appears that Donald Trump and his 20-point plan and the pressure that he has exerted, not just on Hamas and on Israel, but on others in the region, appears to have delivered a peace deal which should mean an end to the war on Gaza.
Yeah, and Alan, obviously the executive word here, or phrase, being the first phase of the peace plan. Are any more details emerging about what parts of Trump's 20-point plan they have a deal on? Because it's unlikely, as you say, that everything's been agreed to.
Well, most of the details, of course, will still be in Sharm el-Sheikh. Donald Trump will have been given the details of what has actually happened. Nothing has been made public from Washington, D.C., but it's clear that there was...
What we will find out, it's going to take time until we know... it's going to take time until we know if this is this is conclusive. It's going to take some time. What I mean by that is where we need to see how Israel operates after the hostages are released. I could totally see Israel just taking all the hostages and then continuing its bombing, refusing to actually release the Palestinian hostages that they've taken, and then, you know, they'll just come up with a bullshit reason as to how Donald Trump actually violated this deal, and that and the United States will go along with it, and they'll say that's right. This is what happened. I can see that being the situation.
Nothing new happened in Gaza. The offensive continued, the bombings continued, and the deaths continued. Now there is an outline of a peace deal. The pressure will be on Israel to stop doing what they have been doing in Gaza for the last 2 years and stop the offensive, which has claimed more than 65,000 lives.
Yeah, Alan, and Trump says that he will head to the Middle East this weekend. How much pressure did that put on Hamas and Israel, and indeed the negotiators, to get this deal across the line?
Well, I don't think there was that much pressure from the president. I think that was always there. And certainly there was a consensus among the countries who were represented in the talks in Sharm el-Sheikh, excuse me, and the wider community, that a deal had to be done and agreed quite quickly. Donald Trump was talking about possibly flying out on Saturday night or Sunday. That then
who
changed
now
with a
is in
statement
Ireland,
from the White House in the
but
last
he's
couple
a
of hours,
sports commentator
saying
from
that
Data
he
of
would
the
have
Law.
an annual medical on Friday, and sometime after
Celebrating
that,
this
very
decision, which
short
gives me more
order was the
confidence as
phrase
well.
that was used, he would head to the Middle East. So that suggested that it would be at some point on Friday. Now that a deal has been done, that everyone is in Egypt, there's every possibility that the president will head to the Middle East much sooner than Friday morning, because, of course, he's very keen to be seen to be the driving force behind this. And to a large degree, he has been. No one was talking about peace talks. The Israelis had killed negotiators from Hamas, both in Tehran and also attempted to do that in Doha. There was a concern that everything was kind of locked. Donald Trump then had a meeting with senior officials from Muslim nations and Middle East countries at the United Nations General Assembly. He said that would perhaps be his most important meeting. And from that came the outline of this 20-point plan, which he officially unveiled on September the 29th when Benjamin Netanyahu was back at the White House. So it appears that there has been enough negotiation for the US president to announce that phase one has been agreed. And of course, this is now all about sequencing. And we've seen that before in a number of peace processes around the world. My personal experience is in Northern Ireland that if you do this, then we do that. And when you do this, we'll follow with that. So that has all got to be agreed. So the first phase seems to be in place. What happens next will maybe be subject to further negotiation, but it appears that Donald Trump has delivered what he said he would deliver very quickly after his election way back in January, and that is a ceasefire in the war on Gaza.
Alan, just a final thought to you before you go, and obviously we'll come back to you throughout the night. There is even talk, perhaps, of Trump visiting Gaza itself. It's not confirmed yet. This is just something that's being reported. If that did happen, though, Alan, it would be pretty much unprecedented, wouldn't it?
It certainly would. It would need a great deal of a huge security operation. I'm not entirely sure that the Secret Service, who protect Donald Trump, would be keen on that.
After the fact, but the suspicion was there. Something I also speculated on was that Israel and America was actually running out of their munition stock, and at a quite a faster pace than they initially suspected. They were also having a hard time intercepting certain missiles. This is precisely the real reason why they fucking stopped. Any news on allowing in international journalists? I mean, we're not at that stage yet. We'll get there. But the stage that we're in currently is hopefully the bombing ends.
Who died of starvation as a result of Israel's siege. So you had all of these policies that built up the international pressure on Israel. But each time there was this growing international pressure, something else came up. There was a war with Hezbollah. There was a war with Iran. There were strikes in Yemen. There were strikes in Syria. All of this was in the last 2 years, and we've been reporting on it constantly. But the international pressure on the Israelis did not wane.
Okay, the Abu Shabab thing is pretty funny. Abu Shabab, who is the head of who is a drug trafficker and an ISIS affiliate, who was in Palestinian prison until Israel broke him out, and then used them as the popular forces, the one that has that famous AI-made symbol, has officially revealed that he has no control or no protection for his own troops. Abu Shabab says, we asked the IDF to integrate us into the army, but they told us they couldn't. Also informed by the officers that the army wouldn't be able to protect them as it had been during the war, because any military action to protect them would be considered a violation of the existing agreement. RIP Bozo to Yasser Abu Shabab. Every single thing that Israel said that Hamas was doing, those motherfuckers were doing with Israel's permission and with Israel's aerial support, okay? Stealing aid, selling it at an incredibly high markup, straight up overtaking convoys of humanitarian aid. Every single thing that Israel claimed Hamas was doing, Yasser Abu Shabab and his popular forces were doing. They were operating out of the red zone in Rafah in an area where it's kill on sight. If you are a Palestinian in that area, the Israeli government assassinates you. Okay, no questions asked. The only Palestinians that were allowed to operate in that area and run around with their guns was Yasser Abu Shabab's gang, the Popular Forces. How dare you say something about such an amazing man, despite the fact that he's illiterate? He's an article writer for big newspapers. That's true. Dropped out of second grade, I believe, has a second grade education, is not literate in Arabic, but was capable of writing op-eds for the Wall Street Journal, famously. Yasser Abu Shabab. I already read this. Can you please explain why we aren't acting like this isn't another pressure valve so libs will shut up and they can keep bombing? The only reason why I'm saying that is because of this. Look, this is the reason, because Hamas isn't saying that. Like, they see something different. They are involved in the talks. They are just as skeptical as I am they are just as skeptical as I am about Israel and America. I still suspect that the ceasefire deal will look exactly like the January one, because like even the phrases that they are using here, phase 1, phase 2, identical, right? It's fucking identical. They're literally saying, oh, just release the remaining hostages and then we'll get into phase 2 where we do permanent withdrawal. Leftists will never stop talking over brown people. No, that's not what this is. That's not what this is. I do suspect that I do suspect I've already told you I suspect that this will look like the previous ceasefires, where like they get the hostages out and then they immediately start bombing, and they can use two different reasons. Israel will most likely, if I'm being like highly skeptical of this deal, okay, the only thing that gives me confidence here is that the militia movements, the resistance movements have agreed, right? But if I were to see this deal fall apart, it would absolutely obviously be on the Israeli side, but the deal would fall apart on the basis of Israel, one, claiming that Hamas did not give all the hostages back, especially the ones who have been killed, right? They'll say, oh, they couldn't recover all the dead hostages, so that's a violation of the deal. And then two, they'll say Hamas is not giving up their arms. Those, I think, will be the two things that people will, like Israel will use to undermine the ceasefire negotiations and then continue blowing shit up. At least that's precisely what has taken place in the past. So I have no reason to believe anything different will take place now. But as I have repeated over and over again, the only thing that gives me confidence here is clearly the fact that the resistance movement is in agreement. They're seeing something that we are not. And I don't know if they're doing this calculation because they're like, enough is enough, they have nothing left, or if they're doing this calculation because they do think that the American deal is sincere.
I'll take a few questions.
Netanyahu releases a statement in Hebrew. Let's take a look. Prime Minister Netanyahu, unofficial translation for Hebrew below. A great day for Israel. Tomorrow I will convene the government to approve the agreement and bring all of our beloved hostages home. I extend my gratitude to the brave IDF soldiers and all the security forces whose courage and sacrifice have brought us to this day. I offer my heartfelt thanks to President Trump and his team for their dedication to this sacred mission of freeing our hostages. With God's help, together we will continue to achieve all our goals and enhance peace with our neighbors. I mean, I don't get it. He could have done this at any point. This doesn't make sense. He could have released all the hostages at any point. Hamas literally on October 10th said that they would do a full release of hostages for the hostages that Israel has. And also if Israel doesn't enter the Gaza Strip. So October 10th, 2023, by the way. So that's what I'm saying. Why now? I don't know. Maybe Trump made the secret boss call. or maybe either Trump made the secret boss call, or Israel will violate this, and they have a side deal, a side agreement where they will be allowed to violate this again. Let's take a look at this guy's an Israeli negotiator.
This is a great day for Israel, but you know the devil's in the detail. We're still waiting details of what exactly has been agreed. But let me ask you, what does this mean for Israel, and in particular the families of the captives?
Well, one absolutely has to hope that this is going to be seen through to implementation. Of course, monumentous for those being held who are Israeli, for their families, who had largely given up that their government gave a damn, to be honest. And of course, for the people in Gaza who faced daily atrocities, killings, war crimes, starvation, and indeed for the Palestinian families and for those being held in Israeli prisons who will now see freedom. But that depends, first of all, on this initial arrangement being implemented. But Darren, we are not on our first rodeo here, and if history is any guide, and just judging by what Netanyahu said already that contradicts what is in the deal, and depending on what he tells his coalition allies, is he going to be saying, for instance, to Ben Gvir and Smotrich, you can dislike this, maybe you vote against, maybe you even quit, but don't bring down the government? Because, and this is really important, and I think those Israelis who are hoping this comes to an end will know that Netanyahu has reneged on these deals in the past and may well be looking for the first opportunity to be able to resume hostilities when he can in Gaza. In the meantime, one should absolutely expect that the destruction, the displacement, the killing in the West Bank will continue. We saw Ben Gvir on Al-Aqsa today, and one should also assume that whatever the initial arrangement, whatever the initial line of Israeli military withdrawal ends up being, that is where it will end. Because I think once the hostages are returned, one should fully expect that Israel will not withdraw further. One should fully expect that Israel will go back to playing this game of how can we make it as hard as possible for the international aid, humanitarian assistance so desperately needed to get into Gaza. And we will be in this game of stop, start. Will Israel try and use these armed militias that it has supported in Gaza to cause mayhem? So I think the first thing is, can we get this initial phase over the line? But then everyone should absolutely expect that this is going to be an extremely bumpy road, apparently with no guarantees.
Yeah, and of course, after 2 years of war, Daniel, many Israelis argue that this could have all been achieved some time ago. And of course, Netanyahu, as you say, has wriggled out of all previous attempts to get a ceasefire.
Well, he has, and we know that this is something that could have been brought to an end so much earlier. We don't know if it is now being brought to an end. And one of the crucial questions is, what happens next? Because when a genocide has been committed,